November 1916. After 140 days on the Somme, the storm of gunfire slackened. The exhausted armies took their rest under skies that carried the first snows of winter. 1.25 million Europeans had been killed or maimed or had disappeared in the shell-drenched uplands above the Somme. The whole area had become an enormous graveyard at which 3 great nations mourned. Field Marshal von Hindenburg expressed their grief.
Over everyone hovered the fearful spectre of this battlefield, which for desolation and horror seemed to be even worse than that of Verdun. The millions of shell holes filled with water, or became mere cemeteries. Neither of the contending parties knew the exaltation of victory.
Neither of the contending parties knew the exaltation of victory. This was true of more than the Somme. It was true of the whole war. Nowhere on the vast perimeter of the war, on the Eastern Front, in Italy, in the Balkans, had the battles of 1916 brought a decision. As the wounded came home and the third winter of war closed in, a chill gripped the hearts of all the belligerents.
The most depressing thing of all, I think, about the war were the casualty lists. Every time you opened the paper, it seemed to be nothing but casualty lists, and you always found people in it that you knew. Everybody wore black, and that was very depressing. Black, black, black everywhere.
After I found that it was officially known that he had been killed, I used to pass my time away trying to make little baby clothes for my baby. And I felt I didn't want to live. I had no wish to live at all, because the world had come to an end, and for me, because I'd lost all that I'd loved.
For over 2 years, victory had beckoned the obsessed nations. 2 years of immense effort and endurance. And still, victory lay far off. Men began to wonder, how long could it go on? How many more would die? How many more weep before the victory? An unfamiliar word began to be whispered. Peace. Rumors of peace offers and peace talks spread from capital to capital across a Europe already half ruined by war. Berlin.
Excepting the very wealthy and those who have stored quantities of food, every German is undernourished. A great many people are starving.
Vienna.
War weariness is growing, and the longing for peace is greater every day.
Rome.
There are already in Italy symptoms of war weariness and discontent. It would be wrong to pretend that there exists here a grim determination.
Petrograd.
The losses which Russia has suffered in this war are so colossal that the whole country is in mourning. The impression seems to be gaining ground that it is useless going on.
Paris.
Full realization of the horrors of war is kept alive by the thousands of women in mourning, the number of buildings converted into hospitals, the continual appearance of crippled soldiers, and the marching of troops bound for battle lines.
In October, Mr. Asquith, the British Prime Minister, asked his cabinet colleagues to consider what acceptable peace terms might be demanded from Germany. In answer to Asquith's inquiry, Lord Lansdowne asked a different and searching question.
No one for a moment believes we are going to lose the war. But what is our chance of winning it? Many of us must of late have asked ourselves how this war is ever to be brought to an end. To many of us it seems as if the prospect of a knockout was, to say the least, remote. Our own casualties already amount to over 1,100,000. We have had 15,000 officers killed, not including those that are missing. We are slowly but surely killing off the best of the male population of these islands. In the matter of manpower, we are nearing the end of our tether. The last report of the Manpower Distribution Board seems to sound a grave note of warning. The unexhausted supply of men is now very restricted, and the numbers available can only be added to by a still further depletion of industry.
The army recruiting staff used every appeal and argument in its armory to persuade enough men to join the colours, but in vain. By the end of 1915, the great surge of volunteers was drying up. In January 1916, to meet the army's demands for fresh men, the government reluctantly introduced conscription for single men between 18 and 41. Only a noisy minority protested against the Military Service Act instead of the mass resistance throughout the country, feared by some members of the government. In May, conscription was extended to married men as well. The results were disappointing. There were 3,400,000 Britons of military age, but no fewer than 2,600,000 of them were in reserved occupations. Kitchener's early appeals for volunteers had been answered by thousands of workers whom industry could ill spare. In Durham, coal miners had marched off to war en masse. Now, in 1916, Britain and her allies clamoured for British coal for their war industries.
The President of the Board of Trade paints the picture in gloomy colors and anticipates a complete breakdown in shipping. The submarine difficulty is becoming acute.
In September 1916, just over 100,000 tons of British shipping was sunk. By December, the monthly figure had risen to more than 180,000 tons. In the whole year, nearly 1.5 million tons of shipping had been lost, and only a third of this figure had been built to replace it.
Our shipbuilding is not keeping pace with losses, and although the number of our vessels is down, the demands upon our tonnage are not diminished.